So civic stewardship, in a sense, is a more systematic approach to community organizing, which tries to take community organizing at scale by connecting communities to each other and connecting them as equal partners with institutions across the board, whether it's businesses or government agencies, foundations, etc. So with that, I'll dive into the slides. The first one just notes that this way of thinking about community change as a nested phenomenon and framing it at a broader level as city transformation, because there's been increasing attention to cities over the last 5 to 10 years and the power that cities have for changing the world. But communities are elemental elements and components of cities, and so I'll make that case. And finally, related to the sort of organizational perspective, what are the capabilities that communities need for sustainable change over time? This next slide just highlights the power of cities. I mean, we passed a threshold where most people in the world are living in cities. It'll be 70% by the year 2050. And you know, cities are driving the economy. They're responsible. Cities over 50,000 are responsible for 70% of global carbon emissions. If we can change what's happening in cities, we've gone a long way to changing what's happening in nations in the world. So how do we achieve breakthrough results in cities? And one of the way I frame it here is that one of our challenges is changing an integrated system of policies, programs, and practices. For example, in the U.S., we've long had policies that provide for poor families access to health insurance for their children, but many families weren't using that. And many municipalities have implemented a kind of a community policing approach, but the long-term distrust between the police departments and neighborhoods has meant that community policing didn't go very far. So there's been a challenge, even when you change a policy or develop a program that's meant to have an intended effect, between the cup and the lip, as it were, between the institution's intent and the efficacy and application at a neighborhood level, there's been a big gap. So that's a big challenge that we have, that I believe a more systematic approach to community change can help solve. And that gets to the second point, is how do we develop at scale synergistic partnerships among communities and institutions? That's the only way that we'll be able to bridge this divide among policies, programs, and practices. And in order to do that, in order for communities to be as powerful and as systematic as institutions are about, for example, measuring impact, and then monetizing the value that they create in order to fund efforts at the community level, they need capabilities that we associate with leading organizations. And I refer to this as a platform of stewardship capabilities, which I'll go into more detail on. But at a high level include measures, participative methods, social media or civic technology applications, and self-funding instruments monetization. The figure below, the social behavioral versus technical emphasis, suggests that, for instance, in healthcare, most of the influence in terms of results is on changing practices, health habits, etc. But most of our emphasis in changing health, at least in the U.S., has been funding very expensive, research on new medicines or new technologies, and not paying nearly enough attention to what is it at the community or social cohort level we'd have to change in order to get better outcomes for people and for our society. The next slide is sort of a summary slide of what we mean by community-led collective impact, a collective impact approach that sees community development and community organizing as important an element as institutional collaboration. So this is oversimplifying it, but if you look at that top oval, that would describe where a lot of the focus for collective impact is in terms of making sure that you have institutions across the different sectors lining up around a particular outcome measures, or for instance with the cradle to career process, understanding what happens at the life cycle of whatever issue is that they're looking at, and having a shared framework, having shared measures, having a way of communicating, having a backbone to help support that.